Alright, guys, so now we are going to be reacting to 8 NBA locker room fights you did not know about. Um, you already know, I said in the last video, okay? I'm going to be posting these like a couple of days after each other if none of these videos get copyrighted because they all have NBA content. But we've been watching a lot of videos that have NBA stuff in them. So, hopefully it won't. Anyway, cheers, and let's get right into it.
Fights in sports. As much as they're looked down upon by the leagues themselves, they are a very entertaining part of the game for us fans. It can take the drama of a game and multiply it, making the game that much better to watch. These fights are no stranger to the NBA, as over the years, we've seen some real brawls. Basketball fans have seen everything from pushing and shoving matches, to punches being thrown, to players literally going into the stands to pummel fans, and even punches that have ended players' careers.
My goodness.
Today though, we're going to go in a different route. We're going to talk about the scuffles, confrontations, and full-out fights that have transpired away from the court. So welcome to NBA Zone. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at 8 backstage NBA fights you did not know about.
Okay.
At number 8, we have Chris Mills fights Bonzi Wells
I
in
didn't even
an
know these
incident
dudes.
that showed us what the tracking of Kevin Garnett by Carmelo Anthony might have amounted to. After a game in 2002, Chris Mills sought out Bonzi Wells. What was going down was quite crazy. Everything began during a game between the Golden State Warriors and the Portland Trail Blazers, as Mills threw a punch at Wells during a brawl that began after the final buzzer. The news from the altercation normally would have been that Rasheed Wallace had to be restrained in order to prevent him from attacking a fan who threw a wad of gum at him. But the story did not end on court. Like Anthony, Mills went to the visiting locker room to find Wells, but he was prevented from entering and continuing the battle. Mills found Portland's team bus and parked his car in front of it instead of leaving it all at that. He and some friends got out of the car and challenged the Blazers as they tried to leave. Mills was suspended for 3 games. At number 7, Cousins confronts Elliott. Sometimes a man has bad luck. Sometimes a man has a short temper, and sometimes a man can put himself in bad situations. It seems that all 3 of those guys rolled into one are DeMarcus Cousins. 2 of that season's suspensions of DeMarcus Cousins were counterproductive and revamping his negative image. He struck OJ Mayo in the groin, and he and the Kings head coach Keith Smart got into an argument. His initial season suspension, however, was quite strange. DeMarcus confronted Spurs color commentator Sean Elliott after the broadcast team had finished their post-game show after a loss to the San Antonio Spurs. Cousins and Tim Duncan were going back and forth during the game. When he had the upper hand, Cousins was barking at Duncan. However, after Duncan sent a Cousins shot back, Elliott went off on the trash talk of Cousins. It was strange, but mostly because Cousins passed, he was suspended for 2 games. At number 6, we have Sprewell versus Carlissimo. We all know that Latrell Sprewell is a strange guy in general. But in 1997, when he had one of the NBA's most infamous confrontations with PJ Carlissimo, he took his strangeness to a completely different level. Sprewell, a budding star player at the time, was tired of the constant nagging of Carlissimo, and the incident allegedly broke out after Carlissimo told him to, quote, put a little mustard on a pass. Latrell decided that the only course of action would be to shake off Carlissimo's living daylights by strangling him. After teammates split the 2 up, Sprewell left, threatening to kill the head coach, only to return 15 minutes later. Maybe more infamously, Sprewell had a 60 Minutes interview in which he defended himself, saying, quote, I wasn't choking PJ that hard. I mean, he could breathe. Sprewell was suspended for a total of 68 games, costing him over $6 million and a shoe deal with Converse. At number 5, we have Zach Randolph versus Kendrick Perkins. Sometimes 2 big angry dudes will end up in a scuffle, and when the tempers flare, it's impossible to avoid. That's just what happened in a game earlier that season in November when Zach Randolph and Kendrick Perkins were thrown out of a game. After the game, Perkins threatened to meet Randolph at the bus, and Randolph responded fairly, saying, quote, I'll beat your ass. After both were ejected, Perkins strangely sprinted off the court into the hallway, where he and Randolph eventually went on to get a little more physical. After the police broke them apart in Oklahoma City, the people in the post-game interview area heard a large slamming noise. There has never really been anything from this whole ordeal. The strangest part was how the whole thing escalated rapidly and violently. At number 4, we have Drazen Petrovic and Vlade Divac. While some of these others may be described as legitimately hilarious or merely groaning confrontations, the fallout between Vlade Divac and Drazen Petrovic was purely sad. I would recommend the Once Brothers documentary for the whole story, as it gives the whole rundown of the situation, but I'm going to do my best to give it justice in the short amount of space I have here. Both Petrovic and Divac were members of the Yugoslav national basketball team that stormed and pushed Eastern Europe to the front of the national stage. While the Los Angeles Lakers drafted Divac in 1989, the Portland Trailblazers owned the rights of Petrovic. The two have been great friends who helped each other manage the NBA transition, but once Yugoslavia's civil war broke out, their friendship began to weaken. Petrovic was Croatian, while Divac was Serbian, who puts them on the opposite sides of the fight. Although both played basketball in the US, they could feel the pressure from home. They were drifting apart and openly cold to each other.
Do you wish you had thick-looking hair the way it used to be, but now?
All up to the premature death of Petrovic in 1993. At number 3, we have Kwame Brown, Ronnie Turioff, Lamar Odom, and a birthday cake? Sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're wandering around Los Angeles streets, and the guy carrying a huge sheet cake looks just like he's got to be messed with. When the name of Kwame Brown passed its height of laugh-inducing ability back in 2007, he, Ronnie Turioff, and Lamar Odom all incidentally met a man holding a 2-foot by 2-foot cake just before 2 a.m. The man asked Turioff if he and the cake would take a picture, and Turioff was happily obliged to do so. I mean, you have to do whatever you can to get a piece of that cake when there's cake involved. But Brown, probably upset that the man offered him no cake, took the man's cake, threw it at him, hopped into his limo, and left. Then the man walked up to Lamar Odom, who left the pizza place, and confronted him about the cake. He was then pushed into the street by a bodyguard of Odom. No charges have been filed, but I'm sure that this guy will never again carry a huge cake around Los Angeles after something like this has happened. At number 2, the Rockets stormed the Clippers' locker room. This is a very interesting story and is still surrounded by some mysteries as to what actually went down. After the 2017 season, Chris Paul would sign a contract with the Houston Rockets during the free agency period, leaving the LA Clippers, who he had played 6 years for and was responsible for sparking some life back into the franchise that never really had any bragging rights. Late into CP3's tenure with the Clippers, he was beginning to grow frustrated with the franchise and some of the things going on within it. That's what ultimately caused him to leave. His departure would leave a sour taste in the mouth of the Clippers, so when CP3 made his return to LA to face the Clippers for the first time since his departure, things got real chippy. All of these in-game feuds led to a lot of frustration for both teams, but particularly the Rockets, who would literally take their frustrations backstage to confront the Clippers in their locker room. Ariza was the foremost aggressor, bringing teammates Chris Paul, James Harden, and Gerald Green with him. They took a back tunnel that led from one locker room to another. The confrontation was merely verbal, but the police would have to be called. At number 1, we have Gilbert Arenas versus Javaris Crittenton. Sometimes you finish playing a game of poker and you haven't got your money, so threatening to shoot someone only makes sense, especially if you're a multimillionaire. Back in 2009, Gilbert Arenas argued with teammate Javaris Crittenton over a gambling debt owed to Crittenton by Arenas on Christmas Eve, no less. Arenas first pulled a gun, but Crittenton produced his own pistol quickly. Needless to say, it didn't go down well with ownership, nor did David Stern please to hear that there were men in the locker rooms threatening to shoot each other. After both players had their leave while the team and the league were investigating the incident, they were eventually suspended for the remainder of the season in about mid-March. So that's going to do it for today's video. How do you guys feel?
Alright, that's going to do it on that one. 8 NBA locker room fights that you did not know about. The last 2 we did know about it. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe. And I'll catch you on the next one. And like the Mamba said, I'm out. Link to the original video is in the description. That's tough.